Good afternoon, everyone. It's lovely to see you here. Thank you all for coming. I know it's a big deal to come here, so we're all very flattered, none more so than, of course, our guest speaker, Professor Forsdick, because we have a lovely day in London today, so being here is very special. For those of you who don't know me, I'll introduce myself. I am Matthew Smith. I'm the director of the Centre for the Study of the Legacies of British Slavery, long name. You can see it there on the screen. And we are the proud hosts of this evening's event, which is our flagship lecture that we have every year at the Centre, the Elsa Goveia Memorial Speaker Series. And this is a very special time to be having this lecture. In fact, completely unplanned by us. It turned out that today marks the 46th year of anniversary of the passing of Elsa Goveia. She passed on March 18th, 1980. And it was a big shock to people who study Caribbean history, people who were aware of her pioneering work when she passed. Lots of people were unprepared for it. The tributes that came out in memory of Elsa Goveia were profuse, including the Prime Minister, who wrote a very moving tribute to her that was published 2 days after her passing. So that speaks greatly to her. I know we have some students in the room, and just to let you know, it's not often that historians or academics have heads of state write about them after they pass. So that says a lot about Elsa Goveia. And that journey of Elsa Goveia that made her so celebrated in her field actually started right here at UCL. She was a student here in history back in the 1940s. She came here to read for British history. She ended up staying on from her undergraduate to do all her postgraduate studies here, including her pioneering PhD, which was a study of slavery in the Leeward Islands, which was submitted in 1952 here at UCL. Now, right after that, she left to take up a position as a lecturer in West Indian history at University of the West Indies in Jamaica, in the Mona campus, which she would teach that course all the way till the end of her life, but not just only as a lecturer, also as someone who built the whole space of research on slavery, but also research on the Caribbean generally. She was a really tireless advocate for building up regional archives, spreading the news by going to various islands and giving lectures at a time when Caribbean history was not part of even secondary school education in the Caribbean. 2 years after she started that job was a commemoration year in Haiti. And it's bringing us closer to our talk this evening. 1954 was the 150th anniversary of the Haitian Revolution. And that was marked in Haiti significantly, of course, but not only in Haiti. Elsa Goveia was part of a group of people in Jamaica who wanted to honor the Haitian Revolution in 1954, and she was part of a radio drama on the Haitian Revolution that aired in 1954 on Jamaican radio. And interestingly, it included some of her students in West Indian history at the time, one of who was the esteemed poet and future Nobel laureate Derek Walcott. So he was one of the performers on that radio drama in 1954. So there's a lot of connections between Commemoration and Haiti in that story, and also connecting with UCL. This is the 200th anniversary of UCL's founding, and it's really interesting to see that Elsa Goveia has been honored duly by the university in this 200th year. There's a lovely little documentary the university has put together on Elsa Goveia, which we're really glad that they have recognized her. 50 years after the 150th anniversary of Haitian independence in 1954, another significant thing occurred. That was when I met Charles Forsdick for the first time. It was in a maxi taxi in Port of Spain, Trinidad. And we ended up spending the whole taxi ride talking about Haiti and Liverpool football. At the time, Charles was well on his way with his illustrious career as a professor, scholar of Francophone studies, looking at Francophone studies across the Francophone world with a special interest among many different projects, but special interest in Haiti and the French Caribbean. Since then, Charles has gone on to do remarkable things. He was, for 22 years, Professor of French at Liverpool University, during which time he was also co-director of the, have to get it right, the Centre for the Study of International Slavery. He also served as the president of the Society for French Studies. He was HRC Theme Leadership Fellow for Translating Cultures. He continues to work with the Centre in Liverpool, the CSIS in Liverpool. Since 2023, Charles has been Professor of French at Cambridge University. More specifically, he is the Fellow of Murray Edwards Professor and also Drapers Professorship of French at Cambridge. All very illustrious tributes to Charles's work. In addition to that, Charles has published quite widely some very major books, really, on travel writing. A book he did with Christian Hogsberg on Toussaint Louverture. He's edited collections on C.L.R. James and the Black Jacobins, among many other great publications that he's done. What we'll be hearing from Charles this evening is just a snapshot of some of Professor Forsdick's intellectual work, but it's an important one. It is very much connected to the questions that we've been investigating, not only at our center, but more broadly for those of us interested in Caribbean studies, histories of slavery, and histories of imperial relationships with the wider world. And that's the question of reparative justice. And so we look very forward to what Charles has to share with us. We're honored that he will be our 5th guest speaker at the Goveia Speaker Series. And I invite you to join with me to welcome Professor Forsdick to deliver his lecture.
Matthew, thank you for that introduction. Thank you for also setting the scene and paying tribute to the work of Elsa Goveia. Thank you for the invitation, and I'm grateful to you all for joining us for this talk and I hope conversation this evening. It really is a great honour to deliver the lecture in memory of Elsa Goveia, a pioneer, as Matthew's just said, in the field of Caribbean historiography, whose scholarship provides a clear foundation for all of us interested in the past, present, and crucially, the future of the region. Commenting on Elsa Goveia's doctoral thesis that Matthew's just mentioned on the slave society in the British Leeward Islands at the end of the 18th century, defended just down the road at the Institute of Historical Research in 1952, Mary Chamberlain, in this fascinating article in History Workshop Journal, describes the clear historical messages of her work. First, she says, in order to understand the political, social, economic, and cultural condition of the contemporary Caribbean, it was imperative to acknowledge its most formative institution, slavery, and how the attitudes and legacies of slavery echoed and endured to the present. Racism, status, poverty had their origins in the violence wreaked upon and by slave societies. Second, this history needed to be acknowledged, understood, and confronted. This lecture is in some ways an attempt to accept that challenge, not only by analysing the ways in which the Haitian Revolution and its complex aftermath, viewed notably through the so-called double debt imposed by France on the newly emancipated nation-state in 1825 in return for recognition of its independence, the ways in which Haiti allows understanding of the afterlives of enslavement in the region. But also I'm going to try to underline the importance in this wider Caribbean frame of acknowledging, understanding, and confronting the persistence of that past in the present. In doing so, we respond also to Elsa Goveia's classic work, a study of the historiography of the British West Indies to the end of the 19th century, the first systematic analysis of early British Caribbean history writing that illustrates how the emergence of dominant approaches to the study of the past are influenced by the contexts in which historians wrote. The changes in the interpretation of British West Indian history, Goveia writes, though they have occurred in time, and therefore can be defined in terms of chronological periods, were not chronological but social changes. And I think my topic tonight is precisely an invitation to reflect on the ways in which the interpretation of history must be situated in relation to the challenges of the here and now. Matthew notes in another article that was very useful in terms of thinking through what I wanted to say tonight, in his study of Haiti, precisely in this broader frame of Caribbean historiography, the social changes that defined the creation of alternative interpretations of Caribbean history also determined how Haiti was integrated into the printed record of that history. Many of you will be familiar with Michel Rolfe-Trouillot's work, and as he explained, this progressive integration that Matthew talks about was the result of a steady process of unsilencing of Haiti, a process in which key thinkers that I've worked on, as Matthew kindly said, such as C.L.R. James, played a significant role. While Goveia was interested in the early historiography of the Caribbean, the focus on Haiti's double debt encourages a broader reflection, not least on the entanglement of histories of the region with those of European nation states, particularly, as will become apparent, France, but I also want to say something tonight about Britain and Haiti. The opportunity afforded by tonight's lecture to talk about Haiti at the Centre for the Study of the Legacies of British Slavery precisely invites an initial reflection on those connections. My focus is going to be on the ways in which commemoration of the past risks functioning as an end in itself, on how, as C.L.R. James notes in The Black Jacobins, there's a tendency for the anniversary orators and the historians to supply the prose poetry and the flowers. But I'm going to reflect also on how recognition of that past can play an ongoing reparative function in the present. To focus a little on the centre and on its remit, the legacies of British slavery, I'd like to say a little bit about the growing visibility of Haiti in recent years in a public debate, because I think it serves as an overdue challenge to a long period of amnesia that stretches back to the immediate aftermath of the Haitian Revolution itself. While Haiti, and notably through the figure of Toussaint Louverture, while Haiti has long featured in British literature and art, ranging from, for example, Wordsworth's sonnet of 1802, via fictional renderings like Harriet Martineau's The Hour and the Man of 1841, to more recent refigurings, such as this graphic novel of the Revolution published by Verso in 2023. Active acknowledgement of the entanglements of British and Haitian national histories have been much less common. There is, for instance, very rare acknowledgement of the failed military intervention of the British occupation of Saint-Domingue in 1793 to 98, that attempt to annex for the British the lucrative French colony, restore enslavement, and prevent the spread of revolts of the enslaved across the British Caribbean. British forces occupied several coastal towns, but suffered catastrophic losses from yellow fever, but also from the guerrilla campaign led by Louverture himself. Visual art, though, continues to be one of the few places where these histories are commemorated and their contemporary resonances explored. Lubena Himid is important here, I think. Her mixed media piece here, from 1987, Toussaint Louverture, uses a collage of words from contemporary newspaper headlines, racist, torture, abuse, to underline the contrast between the promise of a universal emancipation won by the Haitian revolutionaries and the persistence of racial inequalities in the modern world. You probably can't read it there, but she writes, "The news wouldn't be news if you'd heard of Toussaint Louverture." Inspired by her reading of James's Black Jacobins, him had also produced a series of watercolours. They now belong to Arts Council, England, on the Haitian revolutionary leader, in which playfully she domesticates her subject's life. She brings Louverture's wife into the frame, and she asks, not in this piece, but in another one, but who does the laundry? And then in another piece, what are monuments for? Which brings me really up to my reflection tonight on the purposes of commemoration. Himid subverts conventional city guidebooks by raising a statue of Louverture in Trafalgar Square. Here you can see two other pages, Angela Davis in Covent Garden and Maya Angelou next to the Eiffel Tower, using the imagined presence to foreground alternative black histories of European capitals. I focus there on Himid's work because it challenges the silencing of Haiti in British historiography, an amnesia all the more surprising, as I've said, given the key role played by British troops in the struggle against Louverture in the mid-1790s. It also stresses, though, the continued relevance for parallel struggles today of the historic Haitian fight against both enslavement and colonialism. That obfuscation of the colonial past is equally evident, with different emphases, of course, in the case of France and Haiti. In what's now a relatively often cited moment of historical amnesia, then President Jacques Chirac claimed during a March 2000 press conference in Guadeloupe, Haiti has never really been a French colony, but we've effectively enjoyed for a long time friendly relations with Haiti, in that most notably we share the use of the same language. Now, the motivations for the then president's sleight of memory remain uncertain, but whether that comment was deliberately obfuscatory or the result of genuine ignorance, I think both are possible. It's evident that Chirac's comment has got to be read as evidence of the disavowal of Haiti in French memory, a process made particularly apparent in critiques of the singularized and profoundly national narratives of the French Revolution propagated during the bicentenary of that event in 1989. The Haitian artist Edouard Duval-Carrier, this is a later miniature of his called Pretty in Pink, a portrait of Louverture, was one of those recruited in 1989 to tropicalize the celebrations of that year through his contributions to the exhibition at the Musée des Arts Africains and Océaniens, former site of the 1931 colonial exhibition. There was an exhibition called The French Revolution Beneath the Tropics. But other efforts by Jean Rouch to radicalize such a project in a film commissioned by the group organizing the bicentenary were cut short when Liberté, Égalité, Fraternité, et puis après, his film was deemed too radical and has actually never been distributed. This is quite a rare screen grab from it. I mention Rouch's film because it focuses on those connections between the French and Haitian revolutions, suggesting that grassroots solidarity amongst those on either sides of the Atlantic who sought from the outset a literal understanding of the tripartite national motto present in the work's title, Liberté, Égalité, Fraternité, that those grassroots evidence, that grassroots evidence of solidarity is a way of rethinking the way in which Haiti might be remembered and that revolutionary period might be commemorated. In the film, Rouch suggests that instead of incarcerating the abolitionist, the Abbé Grégoire, in the Pantheon, to mark the French bicentenary, which happened that year, the celebrations of 1989 should have been opened up more globally and identified more actively with that revolutionary prelate's advocacy of racial equality and his early commitment to abolitionism. Rouche's film ends with, and what you can see here rather hazily, the mystical unification of Napoleon Bonaparte and Toussaint Louverture in a vaudou ceremony on the steps of Les Invalides, a clear assertion of the role of the Haitian Revolution in its French metropolitan counterpart, and a crucial reminder that at certain points in the 1790s, the hub of revolutionary activity lay squarely on, for the French, the other side of the Atlantic, in the hands of the formerly enslaved. So Rouche's intervention was a rare attempt not only to underline the centrality of Haiti to French history, but also to emphasize the radical attempt of the revolution between 1791 and 1804 to carry through to logical limits arguably unimaginable in the time at France, the project usually reduced to a French national revolution. Laurent Dubois is one who, along these lines, has described the unspoken place of Haiti in French historiography, linking precisely the evident anxieties over ethnicity in contemporary France to very much unfinished debates regarding liberté and égalité, triggered over 200 years ago by the Haitian Revolution itself. So Chirac's comments, to go back to them, betoken, I think, a long-standing silencing of the constitutive role of Haiti in French Republican modernity. They're evidence of a process of amnesia that exists in a clear historiographic context linked to the volatility and variability of the French colonial empire. That loss, from a French perspective, of Saint-Domingue in 1804 is linked closely to the more general demise of the Ancien Régime empire in the post-revolutionary period, and the rapid reconstruction of a republican colonial empire in the period beginning with the conquest of Algeria in 1830 is often characterized by a lingering sense of nostalgia and regret associated with those territories, most notably in India and North America as well, no longer under French sway. In the context of such lamented loss, Haiti inevitably plays a key role, as its attempted recolonization by Leclerc's expedition in 1802 and 1803 was a key part of Napoleonic endeavors to reassert a French presence in North America. And of course, Haitian independence, 1st of January 1804, frustrated any such ambitions, as was made apparent by the Louisiana Purchase already granted the previous year. Now, I'm going to turn now to a concrete illustration of these dynamics of remembering and forgetting that illuminate this relationship, this often troubled relationship between France and Haiti, and that lead us, I hope, to the main subject of my lecture, that is this so-called double debt of 1825. On the Avenue de la Chapelle, in the 12th division of the Père Lachaise cemetery in Paris, is what you see here, a grave that attracts relatively little attention from the tourists, often dark tourists, visiting that site. To the left of the tomb of Théodore Géricault is the much more modest sepulchral chapel of Jean-Pierre Boyer, president of Haiti between 1818 and 43, who died in Parisian exile in 1850. A figure of Géricault reclines on his tomb in the manner of an Etruscan funerary effigy. And the front of this monument contains a relief based on perhaps his most famous canvas, the Radeau de la Méduse. Now, this juxtaposition of tombs, Boyer and Géricault, is for me a telling one, because the key vehicles for the artist's abolitionist sentiments in Géricault's painting are two figures of African descent drawn from life, representing the work's principal model. You can see him here, Joseph, a Haitian actor and acrobat who'd arrived in France in the immediate aftermath of his country's independence in 1804. Boyer's tomb, to return to that, lacks any such ostentation and is marked simply with an inscription noting his name, rank, and office over the entrance, and with that engraved panel inside, noting his qualities and achievements of his presidency for 25 years. Il sut pendant 25 années. For 25 years, through a wise and firm administration, he maintained order, union, and peace, and united the entire island under the laws of the Republic. Boyer had spent the final years of the Haitian War of Independence in exile in Paris, returning to Saint-Domingue in 1802 with Leclerc's expeditionary force. Following the death of Alexandre Pétion in 1818, Boyer led the south of Haiti as the second president of its Republic of Haiti, until the divided country split between the rule of the urban free-colored elite of the Republic in the south and the formerly enslaved of African descent in the state, later Kingdom of the North, was reunited after the death of Henri Christophe in 1820. To protect the newly independent country from the risks of either France or Spain recolonizing the Spanish side of the island and then using it as a means of reconquering Haiti, Boyer rapidly annexed the newly independent Santo Domingo, bringing the whole of Hispaniola under a single Haitian government by 1822. That policy is, I think, a clear reminder of the precarious nature of post-independence Haiti. Split for over a decade by civil war along the pigmentocratic lines that continue to divide the country in the 21st century, it was also subject to that continued threat of reinvasion by European colonial powers, most notably by France itself. Now, back to the inscription in Boyer's tomb, it refers in suitably telegraphic terms to his specific achievement of gaining from France recognition of independence. So he obtained, it's a very short sentence, he obtained recognition of national independence from France, the former metropole. We need to unpack that, of course, because Boyer was in fact responsible for negotiating with France the double debt that contributed to Haiti's systematic underdevelopment over a period of more than a century, and that was only fully repaid over 120 years later. The bicentenary of that debt, an indemnity agreed in exchange for official diplomatic recognition, which reversed the logic of reparations and effectively obliged the formerly enslaved of Haiti to pay for their own emancipation, that bicentenary fell last year. And as I'm going to explain, it triggered a series of diplomatic and political developments that brought to the fore the continued impact of the Haitian Revolution, a world historical event long silenced, as we've said, in a global context. I focus a little on Boyer's tomb, that Haitian lieu de mémoire in the heart of Paris, because it highlights the ways in which, for me, Haiti, while silenced, is often actually hidden in plain sight across the capital, and indeed more widely in France. There are, for instance, numerous sites associated with the leader of the revolution, with Louverture himself, either linked directly with him or with his descendants. So there's the cell in which he died at the Château de Joux in the Jura. There's his son's grave, Isaac's grave in Bordeaux. And there are others created posthumously, you can see some of them here, to commemorate him, such as the wonderful statue by the Senegalese sculptor Ousmane Sow at La Rochelle, or the inscription in Louverture's memory in the crypt of the Pantheon. Not far from Père Lachaise is also what you can see here, the Jardin Toussaint Louverture. And in that is one of those small benches by the road, installed by the Toni Morrison Society as part of its global network of memorial sites in memory of Louverture's contemporary, Louis Delirez, the Guadeloupean army officer who chose self-immolation over the reimposition of enslavement on the island of his birth. And Haiti is invoked more elusively elsewhere. For example, in the stela placed by Nicolas Sarkozy in 2011, next to the abolition sculpture in the Jardin de Luxembourg. You can see it there on the left, Le Cri, Les Cris, where the inscription notes, through their struggles and their profound desire for dignity and freedom, the enslaved people of the French colonies have contributed to the universality of human rights and to the idea of liberty, equality, and fraternity on which our important use of the first person plural there, our republic, is founded. You can see there the text is an actively recuperative one, absorbing collective struggles such as the Haitian Revolution, such as the War of Independence, into a French national effort of shaping and implementing the values of 1789. It ignores precisely the extent to which those values of the French Revolution, far from being universal, were rationed on the grounds of ethnicity, as the reimposition of enslavement in 1802, following its first abolition in 1794 in the French Empire, makes clear. So the complex relationship between France and Haiti is eclipsed, with the contribution of the latter to the history of the former significantly obscured. Boyer's tomb, I think, gathers together the complexity of this relationship. It's relatively invisible. It's a shrine for Haitian visitors, but nevertheless marginalized in the broader site, where, despite the overtly transnational nature of this lieu de mémoire, the cemetery's status in broader French national narratives tend to be underlined. What strikes me, though, and this is an analysis that I developed with a couple of collaborators in the States, Etienne Achille and Lydie Moudlino, in our book on post-colonial realms of memory. What strikes me is the way that such sites as this, as a result of phenomena like Boyer's grave, have got to be understood relationally and prismatically. So in Nora's original collection, Les Lieux de Mémoire, the essay on the Mur des Fédérés, against which 147 communards were executed in Père-Lachaise in May 1871, tells a primarily hexagonal or national story. But the place of memory in Père-Lachaise cemetery is linked globally to others, notably the sites of the penal colony, where many of those communards who were spared were deported, including Louise Michel, where they were often drawn into, there's the Mur des Fédérés, Père-Lachaise on the right, where they were drawn into a constellation of further struggles that I'm not going to talk about tonight, but those include the 1878 Ataï rebellion against the French settlement of indigenous land in New Caledonia, or more accurately, Kanaki. There's a tendency for those connections and for the narratives to which they relate to be sublimated or silenced. The lieu de mémoire can only function as such if there's an awareness of the histories that it freights. And a number of recent interventions have suggested that narratives of colonialism and enslavement are always already, as I've said, present in France, and indeed in Paris, and indeed elsewhere in France, but need to be brought to the fore through cultural, creative, memorial, educational, and political interventions. The epic dimensions of Haitian narratives around the country's historic struggle for liberation from enslavement and colonial rule are, I think, incontrovertible. They reflect, particularly if you see them in their national Haitian manifestations, the generic hallmarks of nation building, forged in the immediate context of a revolution seeking universal emancipation, an anti-colonial war of independence. This quality, this epic quality of these Haitian stories relies on processes, though, of exclusion and inclusion, on the endorsement of certain elements of history to the detriment of others. The initial function of Haitian epic is one of preservation and identity formation. And in the case of Haiti, that involves quite firmly, and for reasons I think we all understand, securing the gains of the revolution, as is evident in the Declaration of Independence by Dessalines in January 1804, securing those gains against those counter-revolutionary forces seeking in the early 19th century to reimpose enslavement and colonial rule. From such a foundation emerged narratives suited for the transgenerational and often transnational construction of traditions, myths, and values, developments allied closely with the parallel processes that interest me tonight of progressive commemoration on both sides of the Atlantic. That need for epic accounts of Haitian history is accentuated by the recurrent threat as I've mentioned already, to the gains represented by the revolution and the subsequent achievement of independence, an independence that would prove both fragile and precocious in the context of continued European colonial expansionism across the 19th century. Nick Nesbitt argues in a fascinating article, The Idea of 1804, and I shan't read this out, that Haiti provides a striking example of the interconnectedness of post-colonial nationhood and neo-colonial dependency. His focus remains on the revolution and the ways in which its aims encapsulated what he calls the idea of a universal right of all human beings to freedom as the positive capacity for self-determination on a global and not merely local scale. What I'm going to suggest this evening is that reading the independence moment of 1804 in relation, as is often not the case, to the 1825 double debt, further nuances this argument, emphasizing how Haiti's developmental challenges were not only the result of internal failure, but also, but perhaps primarily, of continued external intervention, forcing, as I've suggested already, the new republic into a long-term debt cycle with French banks that directly caused economic underdevelopment, to borrow the terminology of Walter Rodney, and political and social instability. So while 1804 marked the defeat of the European powers, 1825 signals something rather different, a post-independence colonial subjugation where French gunboat diplomacy impeded the development of the nation state. And this, let's not forget, implicates other foreign powers too, including the US, which recognized that debt and contributed to Haiti's financial isolation. Focusing on 1825 highlights also a significant gap in global historical understanding, whereby that crucial economic and political imposition is often omitted or overlooked compared to that singular achievement of independence. The challenge to think about the history of revolution and its aftermath is demonstrated by a recent Haitian novel that foregrounds the implications of 1825. And here you see the three clauses of the agreement of 1825. This has recently been fictionalized by Néhémie Pierre Dahomey. This novel here, called Combat, came out in 2021, which describes a dispute between two half-brothers in 1842 in rural Haiti, whereby the everyday burden of that debt, almost 20 years after its imposition, continues to weigh heavily on the inhabitants. And then it's a fantastic novel. It's been translated into English by Nathan Dyes, and it's a reminder that in Haitian society, as is evident not least in popular culture and popular song, the impact of that debt and the neo-colonial pact it represents had never been forgotten. The amnesia was elsewhere, a fact made clear by the reception of the New York Times' Haiti Ransom Project in 2022. Those of you familiar with debates around this will know that while many welcomed the reporting for the attention it directed to 1825, that decisive moment in world history, revealing how the neo-colonial yoke forced onto Haiti, first by France and then by the US, has played a crucial role in perpetuating poverty and dysfunction in governance in the country of Haiti. Others express frustration at the failure to acknowledge fully the extensive pre-existing knowledge of the debt and the rich historiography produced about it, not least over a number of decades in Haiti itself. The novel Combat suggests that the implications of granting the debt a more central place in reflections on Caribbean history, but also on strategies of navigating the inequalities of the present, might allow us to rethink these histories. This is one of the only articles on the novel by Chris Bonner, in which he says, pointing to the debt-ruled authoritarian regime of Boyer, rather different from the account in his tomb. Not the heroic revolution as perhaps the prehistorical moment most relevant to understanding Haiti's present. He centers the slow, diffuse violence of economic exploitation, one that no Battle of Vertières, November 1803, can overthrow. To combat this extortion economy, the novelist invokes a different Haitian revolutionary tradition, a maroon anarchism consisting of rural self-governance and mutual aid. Notwithstanding these concerns about the periodic rediscovery and commemoration of the debt outside Haiti, that bicentenary of the double debt last year, so in 2025, I think afforded an opportunity to reassert and reassess the importance of this historical imposition and to reflect on the meanings of the debt for the present, not least in the context of ongoing debates about reparative justice. 1825, as I've suggested, represented the culmination of 2 decades of French attempts to reverse the independence of Haiti and to regain control of the former colony. Under the Bourbon Restoration, so from 1814 onwards, those efforts increasingly took the form of demands for financial compensation, under pressure from former enslavers seeking indemnification and from merchants, French merchants, seeking to re-establish business relations with Haiti. Now, whereas Henri Christophe, in his Kingdom of the North, had vocally rejected any suggestion that Haiti should pay any sum to France whatsoever, that situation changed with the appointment of Jean-Pierre Boyer as president of the reunited country in 1820. Under Boyer's autocratic regime, the north and south of Haiti, as we've said, were reunified. Following the independence of Santo Domingo from Spain in 1822, he placed the whole of the island of Hispaniola under his control. However, lack of broader diplomatic recognition meant restricted trade, it meant limited political power for Haiti, both of which were impeding the new nation's recovery and development. And it was in that context that Boyer entered into the negotiations with France that led to the Royal Ordinance signed by Charles X in April 1825, delivered to Port-au-Prince by a squadron of 14 French naval vessels carrying 528 cannons. Now, the French might have resigned themselves to the fact that they'd never recover their former colony, but what I've just outlined there, that neo-colonial performance of the delivery of the ordinance and the implication that the Haitian government, under such military presence, had no choice but to sign, is reflected in the clear colonial tone of the document itself, that ordinance of April 1825. So in return for the recognition by France of Haiti's independence, a debt of 150 million francs to be repaid in 5 installments was imposed by the ultra-royalist French regime of Charles X. That calculation was based on annual revenues obtained by enslavers in Saint-Domingue for sugar, coffee, cotton, indigo, and other commodities, and it also included the value of properties they saw they'd lost during the revolution itself. The debt amounted to 10 times Haiti's GDP and was imposed in the context of the absence of any real taxation that could generate those sorts of public revenues. So what did Boyer do? Well, he declared that the indemnity was a national debt payable by all Haitians, with the imposition of onerous taxes on products like coffee and the introduction of a brutal rural code that produced a rigid pseudo-feudal system intended to force workers into large-scale production of export costs to minimize subsistence farming. It was clear that from the outset, the greatest burden of repayment was falling on the paysans, so the poor farmers in the countryside. And sure enough, the perception that the debt was leading to former re-enslavement led to revolt, and it was an uprising in 1842 that resulted in Boyer's removal from power and his exile and his death in Paris. And you'll be aware of this, but it's important to stress this. This was the only case where former enslaved people directly provided indemnities for their former enslavers. And the level of repayment was such that Haiti had to borrow money from French banks and then from US banks to honor those payments. And that's what creates the second layer, known as the double debt. Many have argued, rightly I think, that those repayments severely hampered Haiti's economic development for decades, with a significant portion of the country's national budget being used to repay those amounts. Some economists see the debt as this source of systematic underdevelopment, estimating that the money Haiti paid to France could have been used to significantly boost its post-independence economy, perhaps by as much as the equivalent of $20 billion. That's a figure deployed by the then President Jean-Bertrand Aristide, who used the bicentenary of his country's independence in 2004 to demand repayment of that sum from France. I don't want to forget, though, the second clause of the ordinance. It's the second clause of the ordinance outlining the debt that's attracted most independence. But the first has often been ignored. The first opens up Haiti's ports to foreign trade, but ensures that the tariffs charged to France were half of those imposed on others. And it's that clause that is equally important, I think, because it relates directly to the advent of what in this book David Todd dubs France's Velvet Empire, that informal system of imperialism that privileged economic and cultural influence over military conquest, ushering in many ways, a modern understanding of economic globalization. So imposed in part through the threat of military intervention, and crucially, if we went back to the document, the ordinance deploys Saint-Domingue instead of the country's new name, Haiti. The ordinance is very firmly a neo-colonial intervention. Goveia himself benefited from the fall from grace of Charles X in 1830. He negotiated a friendship treaty with Louis-Philippe. That reduced the debt to 90 million. It extended the repayment period to 30 years. But the final repayment of the 1825 debt was in fact made in 1888, so over 60 years later. But the loans taken out to cover those repayments were only fully reimbursed after the Second World War. As we've noted already, although that debt was never fully forgotten in Haiti itself, it was largely erased from discussions in France. And that was part of what I've been describing earlier, that invisibilization of the struggles, sacrifices, and aspirations of the Haitian people manifest in their revolution. But it's also part of this imposition of a colonial order in that alternative form that substituted direct domination by the former metropole with prolonged economic dependency. In 2025, just another couple of minutes, if that's all right. In 2025, the bicentenary of the double debt provided an opportunity for those histories I've just outlined to be made more visible, but crucially for their repercussions in the present to be highlighted, generating in the process a reassertion of the absent narratives necessary for understanding the place of Haiti in a French national story, and indeed of broader global narratives. For several years, the French Fondation pour la Mémoire de l'Esclavage has played a key role in France in ensuring that Haiti is visible in commemorative practices, in cultural interventions, and in pedagogical programs. It's state-funded, but the foundation is the latest iteration of a series of committees devoted to the history and memory of enslavement, established in France in the wake of the 2001 Taubira law. Now, another anniversary, it's the 25th anniversary of the Taubira law, legislation that acknowledged that French involvement in the transatlantic traffic in enslaved Africans constituted, in law, a crime against humanity. I mention the foundation because I was one of the co-authors of this in March 2025, a note on the double debt, explaining that historical background I've been talking about, but also crucially outlining a series of reparative interventions, including in the areas of diplomacy, culture, and heritage. The Foundation's document, it's available freely online, is grounded in a commitment to recognition of the fundamentally unjust nature of the 1825 Ordinance, of the deep-rooted and long-lasting impact of the double debt in Haitian society, economy, sovereignty, and crucially, the legitimacy of a reparative response to what I've just outlined. That intervention in 2025 was in many ways a response to frustration over an earlier report. There's a proliferation of reports in this area, over the ineffectiveness and limitations of the Debray report in 2004, so bicentenary of Haitian independence, into Franco-Haitian relations. Debray, in that report, delivered his final and largely non-committal findings to the then Prime Minister Dominique de Villepin in January 2004, at almost exactly the same time as France was preparing to support the US-led efforts to oust Haitian President Aristide the following month. The document's rhetorical maneuvers have been studied in detail by Chris Bongi, who sees in the report an exoticization of Haiti in terms of language, history, and politics. In the light, though, of French amnesia regarding Haiti, it's difficult to criticize Debray's central emphasis on the need for a French duty of memory towards Haiti, a process focused on, as I've said, the bicentenary of the country's independence. And there is, in this 2004 report, a clear recognition of the unique relationship between France and Haiti, and the need to use that as a foundation for reparative conversations. But the document at the same time performs that persistent failure to address directly what at the time was the burning political matter of Aristide's call for restitution of the 19th century debt and to explore its clear legacies in the intervening 170 years. So Debray's alternative course of action is not a very helpful one in my view. On the one hand, to contextualize French demands, for example, saying that the concept of self-determination of peoples didn't exist in 1838, so we don't need to understand it in modern terms, but then to blame the victims to a certain extent by underlining the complicit role of Haitians themselves in events leading up to that recognition of independence in 1825. There's a degree, I would argue, of bad faith in that report. Now, the Fondation note, so the more recent one from 2025 there, which responds to Debray, has heralded other recent developments, and this is where I'm going to stop to give you a sense of the landscape at the moment in Franco-Haitian relations in the context of the bicentenary of the debt. So in April 2025, President Macron announced the launch of a new bilateral commission tasked with establishing what he called the truth about the two countries' fraught history, and notably the legacy of what again he called the independence debt imposed on Haiti. He stated, and this is the declaration in which he outlines this, that the commission, made up of French and Haitian historians, should propose recommendations to appease tensions and strengthen ties between the two countries. And I note, this is parenthetical, but it's a development which has accompanied the announcement of another commission of Malagasy and French historians to study colonial massacres perpetuated by the French authorities in 1947 to underline the insurrection of the population in Madagascar. And on the one hand, it looks like an apparent new openness, at government level at least in France, to address challenging aspects of the colonial past. On the other, I think it reflects a tendency to use commissions as parking places. The work of that bilateral commission, and it's due to report at the end of 2026, is evolving, though, in parallel to a national commission in Haiti. This is where it gets slightly complicated. The Haitian National Committee on Restitution and Reparations, the more muscular aims of which are to seek to integrate the issue of Haitian debt into broader transnational and even supranational claims for reparative justice, as well as linking, in the terms I hope my title suggested, commemoration with reparation. you could say there is no commemoration without reparation, I suppose. The Haitian National Commission talks about securing restitution and reparations for the dire consequences of colonialism and slavery, as well as in their mission to uphold and preserve collective memory on this issue. And there's a roadmap for activities in 2026, and this includes educational initiatives in Haiti, public awareness raising in Haiti, a national survey on the nature of reparation, the establishment of a research chair on the subject of what's called the double ransom at the State University of Haiti, and the publication of various arguments for demands for restitution of the double ransom to France in the form of a white paper. So that's the Haitian Commission. How realistic those ambitious targets are in the context of Haiti's current crisis of governance, it's difficult to say, not least because the Haitian Committee has so far not really received a budget. There were recent reports in Le Nouvelliste, the Haiti's main paper, that point to real confusion over the distinctive remits of the Haitian National Committee and the Franco-Haitian Commission. And there's a growing sense of frustration over the lack of clarity around their interrelationship. Suspicion is emerging in part from a perception that France's official intervention around Haiti seems deliberately, again, to be steering away from the discussion of reparations. But it's since been complemented by another development. This is my penultimate slide. A bill supported by La France Insoumise, voted through the French National Assembly last April, that supports the construction of a peaceful relationship between France and Haiti by recognizing a shared history. Series of measures there. The effectiveness remains unclear, but I think the point I wanted to conclude was that they represent quite a significant development in public attention in France, in Haiti, but crucially, I think, in a broader international frame to the double debt and to its implications for present debates on reparative justice. Pending the outcome of the ongoing commissions, there's already been a clear set of recommendations from the Fondation pour la Mémoire de l'Esclavage about not only shared acknowledgement of the past, leading to interventions that are variously cultural and scientific, but also to a sense of political and diplomatic moves, with the latter gathered here under this plan, les E de la Concorde, the E's of Concord. You can see them there around education, the environment, energy, state building, entrepreneurship, empathy, and international engagement. Now, they raise all sorts of questions, not least around the extent to which reparation is to be associated with development or with justice, of course. But what I want to sort of end with is that idea that these recent interventions reflect, I think, in an important evolution in the framing of reparative calls over the past 2 decades relating to the Haitian double debt, from the general to the particular. And at the same time, the international prominence of the double debt has, of course, wider implications that illustrate the importance of transnational solidarity in processes of reparative justice. Haitian claims for restitution have, as I hope I've suggested, potentially unique legal advantages that may benefit the case for broader reparations for descendants of all people harmed by enslavement. And at the same time, especially given the current precarity of the Haitian state, the more active integration of the country's claims into regional and global reparations movements has the potential, at the same time, 200 years after the imposition of the double debt, to advance Haiti's own claims. And I'm going to stop there. Thank you for your attention.
That was wonderful. Thank you so much for that, Charles. We really were delighted to hear that. There's a lot in what you said. I just want to acknowledge, I believe in the audience this evening we have members of the Haitian Embassy here in London. So if you're here, we just want to acknowledge you and thank you for being here.